Okay, so yesterday I was supposed to go do something yesterday evening, say goodbye for some friends. And for some reason I changed my plans and I couldn't go. And I get so fucking triggered that is just like blown my mind away. I know in one option I have the option to go or not go. But I mean, I didn't have the option because I knew that I could go or not, but the other option to don't go and deal with the consequence, the repercussion of me going, it was too scary for me. I just went back to my childhood and see, wow, mom and dad will be unhappy. You better don't go as much as we want to go. So I'm triggered. It's about me. And what's the feeling?
What's the feeling?
I felt rage, anger. It's like I'm not on my freedom here. I'm not free. I need to do something to please somebody else. So I'm not in my freedom here. I feel attracted.
You felt trapped.
Yes.
The anger and rage is always a secondary emotion. Typically, it is covering over fear. But I don't want to put anything. It may or may not have been that, but it was certainly a feeling of, like you said, of being trapped.
Yeah, it's a fear that I could never be myself or do what I want to do because I need to please mom and dad.
Right.
And when it's happened, I got stuck, and I know that 4 or 5 years old little girl, and I could not do anything else than just come back home. So I didn't go or supposed to go. So I did several times the 6 steps, and I was really wow. It's like it was later, even this morning I was doing. So I'm triggered. It's about me. The feeling, I think it was the feeling of be attracted and never being free, And when is the first time it's happened? Well, I did the 6 steps several times, and several times what's come up for me is that memory of my mom and my dad. I couldn't do what I want to do just because they didn't agree, or because they aren't available, or they are tired, they want to go to bed early or not do anything this weekend, so you stay home. Nobody's care or give a shit if Linda wants to do something if that's important for her. It's about the others care. So that I had several layers of that, and I did 6 steps. And I forgive myself forever.
Well, tell us what you installed. When you were treated that way, when you were 4 and 5 years old, you believed it meant something about you.
Yeah.
That got installed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I believe that I wasn't good enough or smart enough or intelligent enough to take my own decisions.
Right.
Or that I will never have my freedom.
Right.
And it was unavoidable because in that age, what was going on there, I didn't have any freedom. And it wasn't available for me. So doing that, I've been working all day long to forgive myself for ever believe that I don't have my freedom.
That you don't matter.
That I don't matter, that I'm here to please others or do what the others ask me to do, and what I really want to do doesn't matter. So I'm peeling those layers. And the one thing that, like I did several times, Polly, and the first few times I had very small release, like it's not working today. Why is not working? And I got mad and anger, and I did again, and I think finally I just like it was so deep inside of me that when I said I forgive myself forever believe that I don't want my freedom or not good enough to decide what's good the best for me, I couldn't believe that. It's like didn't
make sense.
Didn't make sense. So I did several times, and now I know who I am. I am the awake awareness where all reality unfolds in front of me. I'm the creator of this reality here.
Right.
And I forgive myself for ever believe that I'm not good enough. Or that unavoidable conclusion of that little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, that could not choose anything on her own. But I know who I am. I am the awake awareness where all reality is falling in front of me. And I can just enjoy, I can just be aware and changing my frequency, keep my frequency as high as possible is the best way and the only way for me to create a reality where I can enjoy more freedom and take my own decisions, forgiving myself for believing that I'm not good enough to decide on my own.
So with that, the light of awareness shining on, because what you described perfectly was the distortion field that got installed in your subconscious, which was that you don't matter and you don't get to decide. I mean, the child is left with this very limited experience, and then the imposition of controlling parents, which most of us had, that version of parenting that was going on then. And so it's like that now it's like reality is seen through that lens. And so because you're carrying the frequency of that installation, then that trigger is going to show up in your life. Yeah, and so this is the shining of the light on that. That's amazing work, Linda, right?
Okay.
Yeah, and it may come up again. And when it comes up again, you can remind yourself who you are. And remember that you're not anybody's victim, that you have to get clarity on your own behalf and express that. It's a having been caught in the distortion field of our own wounded conclusions, it's very difficult to free ourselves from that and believe that we are sovereign, that we are sovereign beings who make choices, who can decide, because the external from that early time for everybody was the limit of what we could do, what we could think about ourselves, which was the most debilitating aspect. Yeah, so that's the way the 6 steps go. That makes sense to you, Candy? And you're Chuck, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It did.
Have you used that kind of process before?
I have not used that process before, and Kim shared a little bit about the process, so I did just read about the process, but it's not really installed yet.
Right. Yeah, well, the familiarity with it, because, you know, what I had noticed over years of doing what I do is that solving the problem at the level of the problem is just a Band-Aid. And because it's gonna create again. And the level of the problem can look like anything from nonviolent communication to transactional analysis. It can look like all of those things because we are still committed and still remains within us that identity that got concluded then. It was installed and it went subconscious because it was abhorrent. The child instinctively doesn't want to believe that she doesn't matter. And so it's repressed immediately. But we know that everything that is repressed gets projected. And that now we have incident after incident that proves that we don't get to decide for ourselves, that we don't matter. So I found this particular technology, the 6 steps to freedom process, probably about 7 years ago, from a man named Dieter Walsack, who does he's in Vancouver, BC, and he's originally from the Netherlands, I think. But he wrote a book about his own experience with being so angry and resentful and caught up in his early wounding. And he, I think his process, his path was through AA and A Course in Miracles. Is that right, Connie? Do you know that?
Yeah, she's saying she makes yeah.
Give you a thumbs up.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have people who know more about this than I do, clearly. But so that's the origin story, but we've found it very effective. I have a different place that I go to that acknowledges and engages and awake awareness as the light of consciousness on this unavoidable but never true mistake. So at the level of the problem, and sometimes it's helpful to say, you know, they didn't know any better. They really loved you, but they were busy Sunday afternoon when you wanted to go to the movie or you wanted to visit your friends. Yeah, so that I consider to be the level of the problem. And it's often where psychologists go, right? So anybody else up, or are there any things that would like to be shared in terms of discussion? Are Polly talking? She talks. That's what she does.
So you can put your, did you have something?
Well, it's not a trigger, but just a comment you had said. My idea of not being good enough, I was reflecting on the past and my problem experiences from the past. That's spot on what I've been struggling with the last week or so. So thank you for saying that, because you spotlighted where the hook is.
And so what was it again, Terry?
I've been
You've been
thinking
caught?
about past experiences that I wished I would have handled differently, but I was doing the best I could at the time. And I want to look at them as stepping stones to get where I am today. Instead of what I was doing was thinking I wasn't good enough, like I wished I would have behaved differently back then. But I couldn't have done anything different.
No, absolutely not. That is the fundamental innocence that's always at work in every participant in the dynamic. You know, whether it's the parents, the lover, the friend, the person we don't know at the checkout line, at the food line, whatever it is, they're only coming from their own distorted field of their own woundedness. And then, you know, we have wounded children, 7.5 billion, that are trying to figure this out and bumping into each other and creating what each of them believes is the other's fault.
7.5 billion, so there's 8 billion of us, so 500 million aren't doing it, aren't children.
Are there 8 billion?
Maybe I'm wrong.
Numbers.
Give us some hope, some of us right out in that, right? 100 of us is not there anymore. May I ask your?
Yes, please,
Share your
absolutely.
So as I read the steps and as you've talked about them, and the forgiveness or the forgiving was the particular piece that really resonated for me, that authentic. What I guess I'm asking is, I notice that I want to forgive, or in this system, you know, that I would want to forgive myself for example, feeling tongue-tied and unable to communicate in a situation where I've then experienced embarrassment or shame or whatever was going, you know, whatever I was then feeling. And the authentic forgiveness that I think is the magic. I would love to hear you teach any on that, because I found myself questioning, was that a mentalization of forgiveness? Was that a real forgiveness? And I would love to learn more.
Yeah, thank you, Candy. Yeah, I think the thing that you're intuiting that's there is that the forgiveness, it looks as if it's between me and a parent other, or between me and some behavior I may have exhibited. But the forgiveness is fundamentally to forgive ourselves for a distortion, right? To forgive ourselves for not having enough information to behave differently, or it's always about the light of awareness shining and seeing what's revealed there. You know, do you have an example of anything?
Yes, I was thinking about that. The many mistakes that I could call them mistakes, that I've judged myself for. and asking myself the question, where is the original installation of that, where's the original splitting of myself from myself? Where did, I could use words like, where did I abandon myself? Where did I leave myself?
Right.
And I'm not sure if they are all accurate, but yeah, so my original wounding, there may be more than one, that's another question. But certainly when I was when I was 4, my father was dying of leukemia, and I have a clear memory of going to the neighbors, having seen my parents crying on the sofa, going to the neighbors and saying, my father is dying.
Mhm.
And having no concept of what that meant, and probably having freaked out everybody, including my parents. And so some sort of installation of, I should not speak, I can't get it right, I've really caused a big problem.
Yeah.
So that, forgiving myself for that really young,
Right. That's
um,
it.
and the word mercy comes to mind for me. It feels like a word that really vibrates and yeah, the mercy. So where I'm understanding how the steps would work in this case is that, and it brings tears, of
Yes.
course, you know, this dear child, this young child walking around in the world who then, use some language you shared, downloaded this belief that I could not get it right. I should not talk.
That's right.
I,
You probably got shushed when you were offering that information. Yeah, the installation off of that kind of dramatic kind of experience. That's when it goes, and it goes subconscious. And it is exactly, so I don't know if this shows up a lot in your life now. The fear that comes with just saying what's true for you. You probably concluded, I shouldn't express, or I didn't get it right, or what? Your conclusion.
yeah, and certainly, I better not say what I'm really thinking is a pattern in my life. Or, blurting out what I'm really thinking with, no skill.
Right.
Just doing the opposite of holding it in.
Yeah. And so seeing that that's what got installed. So that's been an aspect of the distortion field for you. So you've probably been hesitant to contribute, or hesitant to speak out, or to speak your truth.
Yes,
And so have you done any work on that?
this awareness is pretty new,
Mm-hmm.
so it's, yeah,
Yeah.
it's coming now.
So the memory was going over to the neighbor's house, having seen your parents on the sofa, crying together, right? And going over to the neighbor's house, and it's like just saying what you just saw. You needed to tell somebody. Right? But when that happened, and you felt the resistance to that, the children are so energetically perceptive, right? They feel everything that's going on because their attention particles are out. Their well-being depends on getting it right out here with adults, with teachers, with parents, with siblings. And so their attention particles are out, and your attention particles were out then. And you concluded it's not safe for me to speak. I suspect that was it.
That's certainly a pattern throughout much of my life.
Right, exactly. Right. And so the potential for you contributing anything has been distorted and allayed by that conclusion. So if you can, now you and I and everybody in the room together, we are the awareness shining on that installation, that unavoidable but never true conclusion that you made. right? Can you feel that? Can you allow your awareness to shine on that? I forgive myself for ever having believed that I shouldn't speak up, that I shouldn't say what was true for me. I know who I am. Can you feel that awake awareness that is our true nature, just becoming aware of that installation, that distortion field?
Yes.
Yeah, and the forgiveness is just right there. It's like seeing that what you had thought was true was never true. I mean, your expression was never, what you concluded from that was unavoidable, but not true. So it got installed. So to bring, whenever you have that experience, it's to bring the light of awareness into that experience and remind yourself that this is the origin story for that shutdown, for that being so alert to, should I say it? I shouldn't say anything. Oh, I should, that whole inhibition that came about with that early conclusion. Like I won't be heard, or I can't say it right, but picking up accurately that was something wrong with what I was doing. So it's not that we don't have the experience of the wound, but it's when we believe it means something about us that it happened. So the forgiveness is of ourselves, and it is the shining of the light, and certainly it's the merciful reveal of your true nature. I know who I am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendi. Anybody in the Zoom room?
I just want to say one thing before we go on. It just that feels like a kind of a universal wound.
Mhm.
I don't know too many people who were allowed to speak
Freely and.
their truth as
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
And that maybe explain why they say that the biggest fear in humanity, even more fear of that, is fear of public speaking.
Mm.
That's true.
Mhm.
Because imagine if you have trouble to communicate with one person, how will be communicative? They say that's the biggest fear that humanity faces, public speaking.
Yeah.
Probably relate to that
I
you
think
could
so.
never say anything, don't talk back, don't talk, don't say anything, don't express your feelings, don't. So that now we're like.
There's so much shame and humiliation that comes with speaking something that's not wanted to be heard
Right.
or, lit up. Seems like a really good
I
one.
think it really is.
As a child, I was famous for saying things my parents didn't want me to say or hear or see.
That's your sage nature, right?
What's that?
Your sage nature.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I had a step great grandma that they just talked bad about whenever she wasn't there. And I thought she was a great lady.
Uh-huh.
They never said anything nice to her.
Right.
So I'm so innocent. We're sitting at a family gathering, there's 20 of us around the table, and I pipe up, how come you guys don't like Birdie? And Birdie's sitting across the table from me.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so I was told, quit talking, don't ask questions, and later in life, when I needed to speak up
Mhm.
because of a certain circumstance, I didn't, because I was taught to be quiet.
The shutdown that goes on.
Yeah.
The potential for a different reality, when any one of these things is relieved, is forgiven, is cleared, is quite amazing, because the frequency shifts totally. When we are caught in a woundedness, the frequency that we are emitting is fear. If I didn't do it right, I should shut up. I didn't get it right. And so then we have the reality that proves that we're right. So it's like this insane house of mirrors. And then people, what goes out the window with the early wounding is authenticity. And I always say that for the body-mind unit, authenticity is the highest frequency. When you can just say what's true for you. It's not against anybody else. It's not in any way slanted. It's not distorted. You can just simply say what's true for you. That is the possibility that goes out the window with this kind of thing that happened at the family reunion at the dinner table, or with you, Candy, you get put down about it, and then you're going to be walking on eggshells. You're going to be trying to decide, should I say it? I shouldn't say it. What are they going to think? I could be punished. I may be bad. So when we are initially very young, sometimes this is with infants, and they don't get fed on time, or they're not paid attention to when they need to be, and the conclusion is I don't matter. It's just an energetic conclusion, but then that's carried on throughout their life. Now, because that conclusion has been installed, they will begin to have early experiences of that. And the ability to be authentic went out the window with that early conclusion. I've got to be good, I've got to be quiet, or whatever was the conclusion.
So Polly, because you had a slightly different childhood than many of us, did you have, and yet you grew up in an era where I'm sure children were to be seen and not heard. Was this part of your upbringing as well, or did you feel like you always had the freedom to speak?
Yeah, it's hard to recount that far back. I did have very loving parents and a very happy childhood, and with close relationships with my father and mother. So I do think that I was blessed in that way. And it's not that I didn't have a whole lot of shit in my life at some point, because I have had, but yeah, no, I don't think I dealt with it the same way.
And yet later you say the breakthrough came when you actually spoke the truth.
Right.
So there was maybe somewhere along
Well,
there.
what did happen was the codependency, where I had wanted a little baby brother or sister. My parents wanted to have more children, but my mother had miscarriages and a couple of stillbirths even. And when I was 8 years old, she had a baby born live. And at that point, I totally went into a very strifeful, I should say, frequency of codependency. And so I identified with my role, my best life was on behalf of this infant and child. And that was true for my whole life until I was 70 years old.
So that was the leaving of yourself, the big leaving of yourself.
That was the big leaving of myself into codependency. And nearly everybody has this kind of pull into valuing someone or something else more than themselves, and believing that if that's taken care of, then they'll be fine, right? It's not uncommon. I call it the live codependency, but it's not, like I say, it's not uncommon. But that was the one issue for me. Before that, as an 8-year-old, I'd had a very idyllic childhood.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you.
So we're at the bottom of the hour here, unless there's any one last thing anybody wants to say or ask before we pause. We'll go ahead and take a minute break here. If anybody wants to leave, that's fine. If you want to stay, that's great. We're going to do a 45-minute silent meditation.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Linda. Have a happy travels. Have happy